The second source that you are going to need for your MRP must come from the New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians. Now make sure that the work that you are using has this title, New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians, and make sure that the version of this dictionary that you are using is the one that is edited by Stanley Sadie. Also make sure it's the one that has 20 or more volumes to it, and make sure that it dates from 1980 or later. Now, the first step, of course, is to find the article on your subject in the New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians. And for this and for the next source, your next step is going to make a photocopy of the article if it is 8 pages or shorter. Now, if the article is not 8 pages or shorter, make sure that you copy the first 8 pages and the last page. The first 8 pages and the last page. The reason for this is very simple. The reason that you have to copy the last page is because that's where you're going to find the name of the author or the authors. And the names of the authors or the authors is always printed in solid capital letters, flaming as we call it in email parlance. Okay, solid capital letters. So simply look for the very end of the article where the authors are listed. You will see one or more names given in solid capital letters. Now notice all the detail that I've given concerning the correct names for the authors. Notice I've gone on about it at length, and the reason for that is very simple. This is essentially the keystone of the entire MRP. If you take nothing else away from this project, I want you to be aware that every single book or article or web page or whatever it is that you look at and that you read is the work of a human author, that there is some human being behind it who is responsible for it, and you must be aware that the information that you are getting is coming from a human source. It is not some eternal truth. It is not some divine revelation. It is merely information that is being transmitted to you by a human being. And you must know who that human being is by name, and you must be aware that you are getting that information from that particular human being. And that's why I've gone to such extremes here to make sure that you get the author right. If you do not have the author right the first time you submit the assignment, you will get a 0 for the assignment. No exceptions whatsoever. I absolutely insist on this. There is no way that you are going to get away with scorning the author of these sources. So make sure that when you are dealing with the New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians that you find the list of the authors for that particular article. And let's take a look and use, for example, the incredibly long article on Bach in the New Grove. That is an article which is on an entire musical family that had hundreds of musical members in it. 70-some members of that family are mentioned by name in the article. There are 14 sections to it. It is a huge article. All you have to do is find the next article in order to find the end of that article, and the name of the next article is Bach, B-A-C-H. And above it you will find a list of authors given in solid capital letters. Make sure that you make a photocopy of that page and that you have it with you. And I'm going to give you some hints now on how to deal with those very long articles that you will run into. Bach is a good example. Mozart is another one too. They both deal with musical families. In the case of Johann Sebastian Bach, he's treated in the 7th section of the article. And you will find the authors responsible for that section just before the 7. They're listed before the 7 that is given in parentheses, not after it, as you might imagine would be the case. It's listed before the 7. The same thing happens with Mozart. If Mozart is your subject, the Mozart that you want, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, is the 3rd member of his family to be mentioned in the article, and you will find the authors or the author or the authors for that section before the 3 in parentheses. Okay? If you have any trouble, just write to me. I can help you with it. But make sure you have a photocopy of that page with you. Oh, one other very interesting thing, if your subject happens to be the piano, and by piano I mean the keyboard instrument of that name, in the New Grove you will find it listed under pianoforte. Okay? Do not look at the article called piano. It has nothing to do with the instrument. Look for pianoforte. And there you will see there is a rather long article on it. You will find the list of authors in solid capital letters. Since there are more than two authors for that particular article, you will use the et al. Form for the author of it. Now let us imagine that I have gone to the New Grove and that I have found an article on the Katja in it. My next step would be to write down the information for it before I left the library. And really, people, do this before you leave the library. You will be glad that you did so, because that is a very quiet and a very nice place to work. That is the right place to take care of these details. So let's imagine that I have found the article on the Katja and that it was written, that the article on the Katja in the New Grove Dictionary of Music was written by Daniel M. Moore. I would put his surname in the surname box. I would put his first name and middle initial if he had one. In the name section, if there were more than one author for it, I would put in that author's name as follows. If there were, in fact, more than 2 authors for it, what I would do is simply to erase the and I would type in et al. Like this here. Okay? I'm just repeating that there in case you don't know it. But we have covered that before. I'll do it for you again just so that you know it. In this case here, though, let us imagine that I have a single author for the source, so I could cross out the comma and the and after it. Now, the title of the article is simply that. Sometimes if you're dealing with a composer, you're going to end up with what we call indexing order like this here when you take a look at the title of the article. For example, here we have the subject's surname last and first names first. What you need to do is to put names into normal order. So it would, instead, it wouldn't be Bach, Johann Sebastian, it would be Johann, remember that has 2 N's in it, Sebastian, and Bach, like this here. My subject, however, is the Katja, and that's all I would need to add there. Do not use any numbers in the title of an article. Do not use any dates in the title of an article. If you are using those things, there is something terribly wrong with what you are doing. Now, make sure you indicate the volume number. This is given either on the spine of the book or right on the title page itself, and make sure you give it in Arabic numerals. Okay? That's volume 3. Do not call it volume 3 in like this here in Roman numerals. Make sure that it is an Arabic numeral. And finally, you need to have the year and the first and the last page numbers. Let's imagine that I went to the 1980 edition of this, and that the first page of it was 776, and the last page was 798. Let's take a look at the first page number and the last page number. All we need here is well, let's take a look at this here. Both of them have the same first digit, and the convention for dealing with numbers is if they have the same first digit in a 3-digit number, simply get rid of it. So instead of having 776 through 798, we have 776 through 98, like this here. Make sure you delete that number. If it went on to, let's say, if it were an extra long article and it went on to page 898, for example, we would need to leave that digit there because it is different from this one here. Now, the next step of the assignment is one that you need to think about. And you need to think about it carefully. You need to determine whether the library you are using has either the New Oxford Companion to Music or the Oxford Companion to Music. The New Oxford Companion must be the one that's edited by Dennis Arnold and dates from the 1980s, or the Oxford Companion, which is edited by Alison Latham and that dates from the 2000s. If you take a look at all my emphatic statements here, I'm telling you, you will get a 0 if you use both of these. You can use only one of them. You must either use the New Oxford Companion, which is edited by Dennis Arnold and dates from the 1980s, or the one that is edited by Alison Latham and that dates from the 2000s. Do not use any old books at all. And basically, to do that, you would simply do the same steps that you saw for the New Grove. You would find the article in that volume. You would make a photocopy of it if it was 8 pages or shorter, or just the first 8 pages and the last page where the authors are listed if it's longer than 8 pages. Again, write down the information for this volume before you have left the library, and make sure that you have the author right. In this particular volume, the names of authors are given in full at the ends of articles. If you see an author's name that has only an initial for the first name, you're not looking in the right place. Make sure that you have the actual author and that you have it right before you leave the library. Now, you would fill in the information for this exactly as you did for the New Grove, indicating the name of the author, 2 authors if there are, or in the case of 3 authors, putting in et al. To accommodate that situation. Put in the title of the article. Make sure that you do not have any numbers or dates in the title of the article. Put in the volume number, and then indicate the year of publication. Again, it's going to be the most recent date that you see, and the first and the last page number. Notice again the convention for it. In the example here, 995 through 97, notice that the first digit of the second number has been left out. You would do the same thing if your library had the New Oxford Companion rather than the other one. If your library has both, just pick the one that you like. I prefer the New Oxford Companion, even though it is the older of the two, believe it or not. But you can use whichever one that you want. If you're using the New Oxford Companion to Music, simply find your article in it, make a photocopy of the entire article if it's 8 pages or shorter, or the first 8 pages and the last one if it is actually longer than 8 pages. And then make certain that you have the right author for it. Take a look at the next video in which I will explain this situation to you in greater detail.